Hello. Welcome to White Door Tarot, where the reader is bubbly, but the readings can get dark. And if you've been here before, you know that when I'm a little more chill in the intro and there's Nandi Speaks in the title, that means that there is no reading today. It is almost like a podcast talk thing. I don't know what this is. It's just me talking to a camera about stuff and things. But today I want to talk about illness, age, and mortality, and a little bit about myself. Actually, a lot bit about myself. I felt drawn to do that for some reason today to kind of give people a little more context as to who I am and why my readings are the way that they are. So, last night I was out shopping with my mother and I was sniffing a candle and my fingers gave out and I dropped it. It wasn't a heavy candle and I was holding it with both hands and I dropped it. And I felt terrible, not just because I destroyed something that I didn't own, but also because it was a sobering reminder of my rapidly deteriorating body. So I was born with Chiari Malformation and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 27. If you don't know what that is, Chiari Malformation is a skull and brain malformation, basically, where your brain herniates from your skull. And um, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a genetic disorder where your body doesn't know how to make collagen. And collagen is basically the glue that holds your body together. So all kinds of crazy stuff can happen with EDS. I've even read about cases where people regrew organs or had extra organs or missing bones or extra bones. It's kind of like the body just has no idea what it's doing, and I'm basically Gumby with bones. And with that, there's also, heart defects, organ issues, digestive issues, all kinds of crazy things. MCAS is basically your body's mast cell activation, just kind of not misfiring, but yeah, I guess misfiring, being overly active. It's basically when my body goes, "We're allergic," and I'm like, "To what?" And it's like, "I don't know, we're allergic." And you can go into anaphylaxis for no freaking reason. In my case, fortunately, it's been mild-ish where I just break out in hives for no reason. Um, but I've been noticing that I've been getting allergic to more and more things. Like I became allergic to Tylenol and ibuprofen, which I was using more as a fever reducer anyway, because when you have EDS, you're also actually kind of resistant to you're kind of resistant to like painkillers and stuff. So that's why we're also kind of tricky to operate on. And a lot of surgeons won't touch you if you have EDS. But there is a whole directory online that's available if you have EDS and you're starting to have joint issues or you need joint replacements or you need surgery of any kind. There's a directory online for people with EDS to look up doctors and surgeons and stuff like that that know how to deal with us. So there's that. And also, if you have Chiari malformation, I highly recommend Dr. Holly Gilmer. She's the one that performed my surgery. I'll talk about that here in a bit. But she's out in Michigan, Detroit, and she is most definitely worth flying over for to get operated on by. So when I was diagnosed with Chiari, it was after 2 strokes, and I had been begging my PCP to give me a brain MRI for 2 years before he finally gave me one. And they found that my brain is literally not all in my skull. So you can imagine the issues that would cause. In my case, it was already pressing down on my C1 vertebrae, the top of my spine. So when I needed surgery, basically what they did was they removed the back part of my skull to give my brain a little more room back there because they can't just shove it back up in there. And then they shaved down my C1 vertebrae. And they said that by the time they opened me up, a lot of my brainstem was dead. A lot of my cerebellar tonsils were dead. And basically all of the muscle tissue in the back of my neck was gone. So it was like cutting through butter. And what happens when you have that, the issue is that your CSF is produced in the brain and it's supposed to go down into your spine, but it can't because there's so much. It's congested with your own brain, basically. So the CSF just gets produced in the brain, and then it stays in the skull. So it's like living with a perpetual concussion, but your brain's not swollen. It's just being compressed by all the CSF that's in there. And so what happened to me was 2 strokes, and I went unconscious for a week. I looked like a Popeye goldfish. I was having weird things happen. Like at one point, my pupils weren't the same size, and I couldn't talk right. But my blood pressure was fine, and um, I was in a wheelchair for almost a year because with the brain pushing down on my spine like that, and when you're Gumby with bones, that caused scoliosis, 4 herniated discs, spinal stenosis, and the bottom 2 discs in my spine are protruding in 2 different directions, compressing the nerves that go right to my hips. So my legs started giving out. And even now, I have issues with coordination. I still have some issues getting around. I'm not as nimble anymore. And also, because EDS causes your joints to move around more than they should, I have early onset arthritis, full body. So my neck, spine, shoulders, elbows, wrists, fingers, feet, ankles, knees, hips, spine. Did I mention spine already? Everything. Basically, everything has arthritis. And that's why I dropped the candle. I'm a crafty person. I like working with my hands. And even reading tarot, you have to be able to shuffle the cards. But I don't know if you guys ever seen me, accidentally tossing cards everywhere or not being able to shuffle correctly. It's because my hands aren't doing what I'm telling them to. And every time that happens, I feel this overwhelming fear and existential dread because if these go out, I can't do a lot of the things that I love to do. I can't paint. I can't play the piano. I can't learn to play the cello like I plan to. There's a lot that you can't do when your hands aren't working. Fortunately, for right now, they're working well enough. I just have to be a little extra careful when I do things. But I've always had symptoms, um, milder symptoms in my childhood. I was always injured in one way or another, um, and injured by things that shouldn't have injured me as severely as they did. I just remember always having bandages on because my joints always hurt. Or, I'd break bones and not really notice because it would happen in the most mundane ways that shouldn't have injured me that badly. You know what I mean? So you don't think, oh, this broke my bone. Um, if, for example, at one point I twisted my ankle and I broke my ankle. Usually you get a sprain, not a broken bone, but I broke my bone. Um, and if you guys have ever read the book A Child Called It, that was basically my childhood in a nutshell. I don't want to get too deep into that side of things on the internet, but the one saving grace was that I did have one parent that did the best that they could. But unfortunately, there was a lot that they couldn't shield me from. And so I didn't even really get to be a person until I was 18 and I left. I left because where I was living at the time became a war zone. So I lived in a war zone for 2 years as a civilian before I moved here. And I'm a citizen here, but the circumstances under which I came here are kind of that of a refugee. So now we're kind of going on a tangent here, but on top of all that, I was being bullied in school, and I mean the taking a beating kind of bullying. Kids are brutal. And then as an adult, after moving here, getting through all that, I got the first serious relationship I ever got into ended in the cops being called. And then after that was kind of when I started having visions and things started getting strange and I started going down the path of spirituality. And then I got sick. Or I almost died. And somewhere in that timeline, I lost a couple jobs because when you are sick, chronically ill, disabled, there's a stigma attached to that. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try to put your best foot forward, it's not enough. And I want to get into that a little bit later too, because it ties into the things that I had to learn the hard way to become comfortable with myself, to become empowered as an individual, and to become more of my authentic self. But that's the gist of my life story. And I remember at one point when I was almost dead, I had a thought. Well, there were a lot of thoughts crossing my mind, like, where are my pets going to go? Um, how is my mother going to do? And how is my sister going to cope? How are my friends going to cope? And at that time, I was in hustler mode. Like, I was working a full time job, going to school half time, working on my bachelor's, working three side hustles. Basically, I went months at a time without having a single day of rest. And I was working towards something because I have a dream. I want to become a psychologist. Well, at the time, I wanted to become a psychiatrist, but after coming out of brain surgery and whatnot, I don't think that I have medical school in me. So I'm taking the alternative route, which isn't really any easier, but it's what I think I'm capable of. So I was going somewhere, so I was really, really hustling, but I forgot to make time for play. I forgot to make time for joy. And that hit me like a freight train on my deathbed, that I hadn't given myself the time or the chance to just live. My whole life up until that point had been me trying to get back up on my feet after one tragedy or another. My entire life up until that point had been me trying to prove that I can make something of myself despite my circumstances. But I forgot to just be. And it crossed my mind that I had yet to be loved the right way. I had never, and I still haven't experienced a good love story. And when you're sick, like I am, and you go on Tinder, I only ever last like 2 or 3 days on there because it's just so pathetic. But when you're sick like me and you scroll through Tinder and you see all these guys like, yeah, I go to the gym and I like hiking and kayaking and skydiving and I want someone to travel the world with me. I have to face the fact that I used to be that person. I used to love skydiving. I've been twice. I used to love doing things like kayaking and hiking and all of that stuff. But now, sorry, Casper, I don't know if I'm capable of it again. I don't know if I am physically able to keep up with someone who seems to essentially want a golden retriever, not a woman. And then I look at my support groups and they all have partners, taking care of them and being there for them through it. And it's not an easy thing to deal with, being in pain all the time, having those days where you can't do anything but lie in bed, feeling useless. I could see how, it would be really nice to have someone there with me. But my experiences with all that, mm, let's just say none of the people that I've been with are capable of that. And honestly, after everything, I wouldn't want to subject myself to someone that doesn't really want to be there. So basically, what I'm getting at is, what the sicker I get, the more that love story that I wish I could have had kind of just goes down the drain. And I've come to terms with it. I've come to terms with it because the last thing that I want to be to anyone is a burden. And I've gone through processing that feeling. And I would never look at my other friends that deal with their own illnesses and tell them that they're a burden. But I know they feel this too. On the days that we can't function, we feel like one. And all we want to do is curl up in a ball and stay out of everyone's way. And I mean, even when you look at the statistics, men leave women at a higher rate than women leave men do when there's chronic illness or critical illness involved. So I don't expect much anymore. So honestly, when you think about it, really, what room is there for me to try and love myself if I was looking at myself from the perspective of desirability? What room is there for me to think that I am worth the space that I occupy if I let myself be more concerned with whether or not anyone would want me rather than my inherent worth as a human being? When I shift the focus away from whether or not I am wantable and more towards who I am, who I've become, what I am proud of, and my identity, that is how that's how I get through. Because after all the jobs that I've lost, after all the heartbreak that I've been through, at some point I had to learn to do that, to stop trying to prove myself and my worth to other people and build my identity, build my personality around being desirable, whether this be to a man or to a job. I had to stop asking, begging for someone to see me because the fact of the matter is that you can't make someone see you because it's not you that dictates whether or not someone can see you. It's their capacity, it's the lens that they view you through. Like I was saying earlier, I was going to get into this a little later in the video, but I've lost jobs because of the stigma attached to being disabled. I've been through that many, many times. And that's why I follow the dream that I have of becoming a psychologist and opening my own clinic, because I had to decide at one point I have to pave my own way because I can't build my life on someone else's foundation. I can't count on them. I can't count on an employer to see me and everything that I bring to the table and how hard I try despite my limitations and be like, wow, she's a really hard worker. She is very competent. She's really smart. I have a freaking Ivy League degree, and it's still a challenge for me to get people to understand that I'm derpy, but I'm not stupid. But that's because that's the lens that they're viewing me through. That's how they want to see me. And I can't change that. That's not within my power. I can't make other people see me the way I want to be seen. And it sounds weird because, you'd think that if you just show up authentically and do the right thing, that someone's going to see you. It doesn't always work that way. And that's why I had to just take the reins back and go, you know what? I'm going to go my own way. Because it's not even about other people. Like once you get to a certain point, it's not even about other people anymore. And that's what integrity is. It's not about how I'm seen. It's not about whether or not I'm desirable. It's integrity. It's who am I behind closed doors? And can I sleep soundly at night with who I am. That's what I do it for. That's how I move now. And I encourage everyone to learn to do that, professionally and romantically. I'm going to put my focus into building myself as a person, becoming wiser, becoming kinder, becoming better, building up my education, getting the certifications that I need, the licenses that I need to pave my own way, because I can't count on anyone else to see me. Because what room is there for me to reach my full potential if I had to count on someone else to see me? In this ableist, sexist, ageist society where people always have some kind of bias or another, how can I expect someone else to fully see me? No one else in this world can see me as fully as I can see myself. So I have to pave my own way and get the life that I believe I deserve and give myself the love that I believe I deserve. That's what I mean when I say I don't count on them anymore. I don't expect anything from anyone anymore because I've learned that I can't. That's giving your power away. That's letting someone else dictate what you're worth. And I had to learn the hard way not to do that. I can't take it personally when someone else fails to see my worth. It's not their fault that they haven't grown past their biases, their limitations, their capacity. And it's not my fault either. There's no gymnastics that I can do to make someone else see me the way I want to be seen. The best that I can do, the best that any of us can do, is strive to become the best versions of ourselves possible. To really go inward and do the work and learn to love ourselves and learn to assert our identity in a world that keeps trying to tell us who we are. That's how you reach self-actualization. That's how you reach self-empowerment. That's how you attain your full power. That is how you achieve self-love. That's how you achieve true freedom. When you are no longer constricted within the confines of what other people want. When you are no longer concerned with what other people want from you. And you are more concerned with what you want to give and who you want to be. That's freedom. I'm sure that men deal with this as well, but I'm not a man, so I can't speak on their experience. I can only speak on mine from the perspective as a woman. But I've noticed that, on magazine covers and even in the way women talk about themselves, or, the way that they get defensive when age is brought up, that women a lot of the time operate from the perspective of the male gaze, or what we as a society think the male gaze is, rather than looking at one another like we are art, like we are divine. And from that perspective, I struggle too, both from a body positivity perspective and also being sick. So if I look at myself from the perspective of the male gaze, I am undesirable. So I had to learn to look at myself through the lens of the people that love me the most. And that includes me and these boys, my friends. I have really, really good friends. When I was going through what I was going through with my illness, I had one drive an hour every week just to mow my yard for me because she knew I couldn't do it. I had another one carry an AC into my house for me because the heat of the summer was making me sicker. And they literally just gave me an AC. I had another friend that donated so much money to my GoFundMe. Um, and basically, oh, and I had one actually go to the surgery with me because when I went to get my surgery, I wanted my mother to stay with my pets because I love them. And I knew that when I woke up from the surgery, my first thought was going to be them. And I wanted to know that they'd be okay. I wanted someone home with my dog because I didn't want to board him. I didn't want him to be alone and sad and feeling abandoned while I was going through what I was going through. I knew he'd miss me, but I wanted at least someone to be here with him. So I had her stay at home with the pets, and I was ready to go to my surgery alone. I didn't know how I was going to get back after the fact, but I was willing to do it. But my now late uncle, who I didn't even know existed up until that point, and one of my best friends went to the surgery with me. And another one of my friends sent her off with a bunch of crystals and a selenite lamp to set up in my ICU room to help with my recovery. And I felt so loved. After I had that thought of, wow, I've never been loved the right way, I got smacked in the face with, I've been loved a better way. I've been loved unconditionally by people who want nothing from me. I have a whole community of people that love me. And so my life started to shift away from the perspective of the male gaze. It started turning into a more vast sense of love. And one of the Nandi Speaks videos that I posted was about that, about unconditional love and universal love, basically just love in its purest form. And this is the experience that I'm speaking from. So, going through these experiences, if you looked at my life from the outside in, it would look like some kind of cruel joke. It's been one thing after a freaking another. And it's always been really big, dramatic, drastic things happening to me. I mean, war, abuse, near death, chronic illness, and abusive relationships that end in the cops being called. Like, what a story, right? But I don't see it that way because the way I see it, people don't choose suffering. If we have option A, option B, A sucks balls and B is a nice and easy life, we're always going to pick the easy life. But the easier option doesn't bring you to your full potential. It doesn't bring you to the deeper insights. It's hard and it breaks most people, but the ones that can get through it, the ones that can survive it, come out with something that cannot be mimicked. And I can say with confidence that I earned that. And I think that when we get self-conscious about age, when we get self-conscious about illness, and when we start to worry about whether or not we're going to be able to find a boyfriend or girlfriend with whatever we have going on, we forget the fact that we become more decadent for it. We become more multidimensional for it. We become deeper for it. And we gain something that can't be mimicked. With age, if you've lived your life earnestly, comes wisdom. You know, that kind of gave me a flashback to when I was about 10 years old. I think I was about 10. Yeah. And I was telling off one of my dad's friends. And he was this like 60 something year old guy. And I was just sitting there telling him off. And he was like, "You don't talk to your elders that way." This man was calling his wife over with a bell. And I'm not exaggerating. He literally, they invited us over for dinner. He was calling her over with a bell. And she would come out of the kitchen and serve, whatever, or get him a refill or whatever, wearing an apron like a freaking, that's his wife. And he was calling her over with a bell. This guy was a douche. And so I'm 10 years old and I'm telling him off. And he's like, "You don't talk to your elders that way." And I was like, that makes it even worse. Your age makes this even worse because you've had all this time to become a decent human being and you failed to do so. And I was 10. So basically, I haven't changed much. But anyway, if so, that's why I say if you've lived your life earnestly and you have a growth mindset, with age comes wisdom. With illness comes a different perspective. I tend to be very conscious of mortality. And so I try to savor everything. I make it a point to spend as much time as I can with my mother. I make it a point to spend as much time with my dogs. Um, I pay close attention and I'm very attentive to my pets because I know that they will die or I might die. I mean, with everything I have going on, heart attacks, strokes, possible at any time. I could literally drop dead right now. But I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that it's a gift because my life is lived in Prismacolor. My life is lived at a depth that not many people get to see. And so, as horrible as all this sounds, as horrible as all this feels sometimes, it is a gift. This is also why I've said in another video at one point the opposite of negativity is not positivity, it's gratitude. Again, I speak from experience. What has gotten me through everything that I've been through and what keeps me here today and every day and what has made me the person that I am, rather than becoming understandably bitter or angry or resentful, has been love. I posted on my Facebook page and my TikTok the other day about how, when they say like if they wanted to, they would. And there are all these people that say, well, that's the thing though, is like some people they have mental illness or some people they have other issues where they can't, or there's a limitation or a blockage that stops them from expressing love in healthy ways. And I understand that. I understand mental illness very well. I'm trying to go into the business of helping, you know, people that have mental illness. But in my experience, if love isn't a good enough reason for one to straighten up, try harder, push through discomfort and the impossible, then what is? If love doesn't get you there, then what does? Because my driving force, for me personally, And I don't believe in speaking on universal truths because every life story is different. Everyone functions differently. I get that. But for me, at least, it's always been love. Love for someone else, love for life itself. And here lately, I've been learning love for myself. So, learning to take yourself back from judgment or from trying to appeal to the opposite sex or from trying to prove a point, trying to prove someone wrong, trying to make something of yourself out of spite. It can work. I mean, that can work, but only for so long. And taking yourself back from that mindset and just moving in love for someone else, something else, for life itself, for the sake of life, for yourself. That's the path to true personal empowerment and authenticity. And that, in turn, is the path to spiritual empowerment. And that's why I read the way I do. That's why this channel, and it's gotten some hate for not being one of those channels that go, oh, your person's going to come back. Oh, let's see how they feel about you. No, I've been talking about how you need to worry a little less about how they feel about you and worry a little more about how you feel, how they made you feel, how the way they treat you makes you feel. And that's for this reason. Because my goal as a reader, as a person, even in a professional capacity, is to empower people to become the best versions of themselves possible, to become authentic and strong and happy, to break away from the expectations, from the things that bind us, because it's not until we learn to break free from those things that we truly, truly find ourselves. And it's not until we truly, truly find ourselves that we attain spiritual enlightenment. So the hate that this channel's gotten, from people that don't like that don't like yeah, sometimes, honestly, I can get a little harsh because I get too tired to put a filter on. That's okay. That's how I roll. I've accepted it. But this channel isn't for people like that. It's fine that they leave because I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the people who know that they can be more. I'm talking to the people who are sick of their own crap. I'm talking to the people who are ready to self actualize and put in the work to earn the life that they truly deserve. I'm talking to the people that have gone beyond worrying about their love life, worrying about dying alone as if it's some kind of punishment. We all die alone, and that's the truth that no one wants to face. And I've been there already. I've been there already. I know what it's like to be a dying person. And I know the kind of thoughts that cross your mind when you're having your final moments. Hopefully, since I've been blessed with another shot, next time I go through that, it'll be a little more peaceful. But I want to help people, as morbid as this sounds, have peaceful deaths. Yeah, that's really the end goal there. Is I want to help people get to die peacefully, because that means that you've lived a good life. That means that you've done the best that you could. Dying peacefully is the greatest gift. And I know that from experience too. So again, that's why this channel is the way that it is. I'm not interested in doing anything any differently. And I don't care if this grows or not. Because I believe that someday somebody's going to be cleaning the house, just streaming YouTube on the TV. And they're going to be watching whatever. And then my video is going to pop up. And I'm going to say something that they needed to hear at that time. That's why I do this. I can't read like the other readers do. And I'm not going to crap on them. They're doing what they need to. And the people that go to them are going to them because they need something from them. Comfort, a dopamine hit, reassurance, even if it's just false hope. And I can't crap on them for that, because that's where they are. That's where they're at. And that's okay. If this channel isn't for you, there's no shame in that. There's absolutely no shame in that. But I can't read the way that they do, because I'm not at that frequency anymore. After living the life that I have lived, I am not at that frequency anymore. And you can ask Voodoo Rat Rod in the comments at some point. She's seen me do like reading events, where a bunch of tarot readers and stuff get together, light workers, and we all just have this one big event, and a bunch of people walk in and out and get different stuff done. My readings are kind of more like psychic therapy sessions. My knack, my niche, is looking for the wound that hurts the most. My niche is looking for the pattern that keeps the person stuck. I'm not concerned with your love life. I do not give a damn if your person is coming back or not. I'm focused on helping you. And that's just my style. I'm actually kind of notorious in this local area for not being the right tarot reader to send your friend to if they've never had a reading done before. I am not for beginners. I am not for newbies. And it's actually an ongoing joke where, people be like, oh, you sent them to her? Like that's the reputation that I have locally. And so I'm okay with doing stuff the way that I've been doing them. But I figured that I would give everyone a heads up as to why I say in the beginning of every video, where the reader is bubbly, but the readings can get dark.